gotta tell somebody.
This is the best thing I've ever seen.
That. Let's talk about that.
You need this. Listen to this.
Memorable and exciting.
Well, then be less boring.
I'm going to tell everyone. Wait here.
Mighty remarkable, Big Daddy. Remarkable?
Remarkable.
Welcome to Remarkable, a podcast for B2B marketers that deconstructs the most iconic moments in film, television, pop culture, and advertising for a single purpose: to give you, the B2B marketer, the same storytelling techniques that the pros use. In each episode, you will learn techniques from Hollywood, Pixar, Marvel, and beyond, from Spielberg's hands to yours, bringing remarkable content ideas to you every single week. I'm Ian Faison, CEO of Caspian Studios. This is Remarkable. This week, we're talking marketing lessons from Armchair Expert.
He's an armchair expert. He's an armchair expert.
With the help of our special guest, Katalon CMO and Armchair himself, Derek Weeks. Derek, how are you?
Ian, I'm good. Big Armchair fan. Been listening for years. Love it. So glad to be talking about it here.
And we are excited to dig into that. Why the heck did you pick Armchair Expert to talk about today?
So I listen to it every week. I'm an avid listener, and they have different kinds of content. They have their long form content, which is just a conversation, some guests that they bring on huge variety of topics, which are pretty interesting. But they also have these short form bits of content on kind of a part of their series called Armchair Anonymous, which are kind of fun, light, entertaining, all of that. But I think there's kind of three things from a marketing perspective. One is authentic vulnerability in their content. The other is community generated content, which I love. And then the other is the one I just mentioned, the long and short form of the content. So on the authentic vulnerability side, it's really about be human. Like as a CMO, one of the things that I did at Katalon when I've been here almost a year and a half, I came in and I said, we're a traditional B2B tech company. And what do? We talk about our products and the features and the platform like every other company does. And when I came into the place, one of the things that really stood out about Katalon was its people. They're amazing people that have been in this industry for a long time. They know their stuff. They're really interesting. They've got loads of experience. They said, we have to get these people in front of our audience because it will make a difference. The human to human connection is really important. And I think part of that is when you have people that are actually talking to your audience, it builds an emotional connection with your brand. And if you're an Armchair Expert fan or an armchair, as they call them, that kind of emotional connection to the people that are coming in is like a right part of what makes that podcast work. The other thing that I just love, as I mentioned, is the community-generated content. Mm-hmm. That we have, at Katalon, we have a community. It's now 117,000 people. And we have this discourse forum that has hundreds of thousands of pieces of user-generated content in them. And from the armchair side of it, they have this every Friday. They do Armchair Anonymous, and they have subjects like cruise ships or jury duty or kind gestures or something like that. And people from their community, the armchairs, call in and say, I have a story that I want to share. And it's pretty interesting. And Monica and Dax, who lead the show, or Dax, who lead the show, aren't contributing the content. They're usually the ones in the main episodes that are talking with the guests and kind of, bantering back and forth. But the community generates this content. So once a week, they have like 3 people calling in, sometimes 4. And they're like, hey, here's my story on this particular subject. So they really don't have to spend time creating content at all. And when I think about our community at Katalon as an example, we have over 100,000 people and they come in and they create content in our forums all the time, which we don't have to create. And I couldn't afford to create the amount of content that they've created on my marketing budget, right? So that like believe in your community and the value that they create to bring the content in. And then going back to the last point, the kind of long and short elements of the content. We're going to sit here for 40 minutes or so and talk about marketing and the different things about it, right? And I think your listeners and your audience expect and know that, but they also spend their lives on TikTok and other short form pieces of content and LinkedIn and Facebook. Like, I want something in 10 seconds, in 15 seconds, in 30 seconds, right? And that kind of mix of long and short is something that you have to play into as a marketer and realize your audience expects different things at different times. So those are kind of the armchair marketing lessons, if you will.
Do you own merch?
I don't. There's a bunch of, I just don't think I'm the guy to walk around with armchair merch.
Okay. All right.
Now, Dave Portnoy, if you follow him in One Bite, and he's got his Peaches dog, like I don't have the Peaches merch, but I would go after the Peaches merch anytime. Like,
all right.
I love our dog. Anything dog related, is
some Stella Blue coffee. How many of the shows do you listen to?
So it kind of depends on my driving. I work from home, so I'm not in the car a lot. But when I'm out, kind of, especially on Saturday morning running errands, I'm like, I can fit in Armchair Anonymous, and they're kind of quick episodes or, quick versions where each guest is only on for maybe 5 minutes or so. So I can listen to that quickly between stores and get an episode in. And then if I'm on a longer drive, then I pick like who's got a pretty interesting topic that they have. And they cover so much. I mean, the breadth of guests that they have is pretty amazing, and the topics they cover.
When did you find out about the show first? Did you like Dax before this? How long have you been listening?
I think I was just looking for, I need a new podcast. What's out there? And I probably stumbled upon it because it's a top rated, Spotify podcast, but I was like, okay, I'm just curious. I'll listen in. This might sound interesting. And then I was just hooked from like the first episode. And I think it's the authentic banter between them and the vulnerability that comes out immediately. It's not just a guest talking like we've got our scripted questions, but it's the whole life experience part of it that comes in as well. Like, them as people, not just as guests. The thing that they might be there promoting, but you hear the personal lives and journeys and all that in it. It's one of these things, when you listen to it and you understand what resonates, the more you get to know the people and have that emotional connection, the better. And I think that's part of what I try and take to my marketing team at Katalon as well, is we need to be authentic. You need to be really authentic. And some people are like, oh, we're going to do this video, or Derek wanted a video, right? So we're going to produce this thing. And they go through and they record something and they polish it to the 10th degree. And I'm like, the original thing was good. That you could have just picked up your iPhone, recorded this conversation, done it in a really authentic way without all the editing, and it would have hit better with this audience, right? We in fact, we market to a developer, tech, QA audience. They don't want overly polished. It feels less authentic to them. It feels like they're being pitched the more polished it is. And so, that authenticity is a part that needs to come in and kind of, right. Somehow the younger generation doesn't always recognize that you can be overly polished and therefore less authentic, because they look at different pieces of content that have really high production value. And they're just like, oh man, we need to be like Mr. Beast, like authentic lighting, staging, all of that plays into making some of those those episodes just amazing. But it's just like just holding up your iPhone and recording yourself. I mean, the number of times my daughter has held my phone and recorded me standing in the front yard saying something that we use as marketing content. Like there are many, many series of those out there.
Can I say, I agree with you, but I will push back a little bit because your favorite show has a multi-million-dollar production team. And they have exquisite visuals. They have multicam setup. They have a studio. And I think that all that stuff does really make a difference. So like, I totally agree with you on the authenticity piece. I think part of the reason that he gets the conversations that he gets is because he's such a good interviewer. But I do think that part of it is like the guest knows that they're going to be treated with utmost respect. And like, guests want to know that their story and their image and their likeness and their sort of personality are going to be portrayed correctly. And like, if you sound like you're, talking through, a paper cup and a string and your, video's all glitchy, you're not going to feel as good. So I do push back a little bit that like, and not, this isn't like the product. Ian runs a studio and I think high quality production is always the most important thing. I totally agree. But I do think that like there is a market for both of those things. And like, if they had crappy sound quality, I think that they would not be as successful.
I agree with you on the point that there's a time and place for both, right?
Yeah.
And I think like I come from a startup world. I've been in B2B startups for 30 years, right?
Yeah.
And we usually have no money. So
yeah, that's right.
The idea of like, oh, we could spend $25,000 on producing this cool video that goes out for 15 seconds. Like you could, but that's a big chunk of the marketing budget that you have, right? So could you do that once a year, or could you do that in a couple of instances where it really makes sense? We're going to sit down with our CEO, have a really meaningful conversation. Let's polish that up. But if I'm going to tell the team, I'd love to get out 50 pieces of content this month that are video-based content, we don't have the budget or the time or the resources and expertise to make those super high quality. Right? I think it's just the balance of those.
No, I totally agree. I think you're right. And I think that like all of these different trade-offs are things that just people don't really think about. Like, because they don't know. Like, you don't know how long a Quentin Tarantino movie sits in the edit bay. You know what I mean? Yeah. You have no idea. So like the reason, or you don't know how long a Mr. Beast video, to your point, or a Armchair Expert, like you don't know. So it's just people making stuff up, right? Yeah. So you could say like, hey, we spent 3 months in post-production on this one video and this video got, 17 million views. You'd be like, shit, that's worth those 3 months, right? Like that's pretty darn good. If you do 3 months of a video in startup world and that video gets 15 views, which is what most of our videos get in this in B2B world, you go, well, geez, it couldn't have been worth it for those 15 views. And then you go, well, what if those 15 views are 15, of our top customers? Then maybe now it was worth it again. So I think that it's just like, we have just been making those decisions based off of, incorrect information or non-existent information, or just sort of doing check the box type stuff, rather than saying like, what are we really trying to do here? Like, there's a reason why, Salesforce put banners that are 100 feet tall all over San Francisco of their customers, right? Because they wanted to make them look cool. And that's how you make people look cool. And so that's the utility of the thing that they're trying to deliver. If that's the utility of your content, you should make them look cool. If the utility of the content is something else, you should try to do that. So anyways, not to get too nerdy off the bat here.
No, as a marketer, I mean, like, this is my life. I do this all the time. I'll see that banner or that video or that episode or whatever, and I'm like, okay, that's cool, or that wasn't cool. Why was that cool? Why wasn't it cool? Like, what actually played into it? What resonated? Why? Or this resonated with an audience, but it's not resonating with me. Why is it resonating with that audience? Like, what is clicking into that thing? Because it's not like I'm not always the ICP for whatever is out there, but I'm always curious of like, why did it resonate? And can we learn from that? Can we leverage that? Is there an idea I can steal? Like, this part of why I love being a marketer is I get to do that all day with this stuff.
Yeah. I recently listened to a podcast that was so informative. It was like mind-blowingly informative. And I'd never heard anyone talk about this particular topic. And then I started sort of analyzing it from the, someone has built 150 podcasts sort of thing. And I was like, man, the reason why this is great is just simply put, it feels like I am a fly on the wall. Like, I feel like I'm getting privileged access to something that I wouldn't normally get access to. And like, I wasn't focused on the sound quality or this and that. And it was good. And it was like, I would say a minimum standard. It did sound good. And I was like, every single, creating that moment for your audience, like, that's always a goal, right? And no matter what it is. And so, yeah, sometimes we lose the sight of that.
I heard, Roger Ebert, Gene Siskel, they did the movie review thing. So I was listening to Roger Ebert came to a bookstore. He was doing a book review. This was ages ago. And he said, you know what the difference between a thumbs up and a thumbs down for me is? A thumbs down is I was sitting in the movie theater watching a movie.
Yeah, totally.
And a thumbs up was I was sitting in the theater, and by the time the movie ended, I realized I was in the movie. I was so immersed in the experience. And if it did that, that was a thumbs up. If I was just there watching something being projected on a screen, it was a thumbs down. It never drew me in. And your comment of like, I was a fly on the wall in that conversation, like, yeah, you were like the thumbs up kind of experience.
Zooming out, tell us what it means to be CMO of Katalon.
It means a lot of work. No, it is a ton of fun. I mean, it is a job that I love more than anything as CMO because as I mentioned earlier, I've been in startup land for basically 30 years of my career. Sometimes I end up working at a big company because my startup is successful and ends up being acquired by one of those big companies. But it is the world of trying to create something out of nothing. And, while we are a business, we do exist, we've been growing rapidly over the last number of years. It is the challenge of not enough people know about us, are aware of us. How do we grab attention in the market? And one of the things that years ago, I kind of stumbled on this term of unfair mindshare. Mm-hmm. And it was this, how are you a small company usually competing against a big idea or a big market or a big vendor out there? And what can you do that is cool, new, innovative, interesting, authentic to grab attention in the market and capture that unfair mindshare? So when you're a company of like 5 marketers or maybe 25 marketers or whatever competing against some company that's got $1 billion budget, how do you get attention in that market in a way that was just you out thought and out executed the others? And I love leading a team, coaching a team, managing a team of people that gets it there, and not just of marketers, but how do you work with the salespeople? How do you work with the legal team, the finance team, the product team, and all those? It's like, what's the team effort to move the ball down the field? And that's like, I'm completely addicted to the experience of that, like, try to figure out how to run that ball down the field to get that attention and grow that business into something where, yeah.
And we're going to dig into your book, Unfair Mindshare, CMO's Guide to Community-Led Marketing in a Product-Led World, here in a little bit. Yeah. But first, Meredith, what the heck is Armchair Expert?
Hello, and welcome to the Armchair Expert. I'm Dax Shepard.
And I'm Monica Padman.
Welcome, Monica. Let's tell everyone what this podcast is all about.
So Armchair Expert is Dax Shepard's podcast that looks at the messiness of being human. And he says he learned of the term armchair expert in biology class. And he says it references 16th century evolutionary biologists, these guys who just sat in armchairs and theorized about how the world worked.
Absolutely no lab work, no field work, no studying whatsoever. They just said this makes sense. And if people thought that made sense, then everyone ran with it.
It's very you.
It's very me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Dax Shepard says that that's very him. He says he makes big, sweeping statements with conviction and doesn't back them up with any kind of research. And so I thought it's cool that he has his producer and co-host, Monica Padman, and she's the one who does the fact checking. So she'll look into his claims, do some research. So I like that there's balance there. But anyway, episodes explore. Yeah. That's us.
That's us. Ian just makes stuff up. Meredith looks it up.
No way. We're a good team. But so anyway, episodes explore how people have overcome failures, made mistakes, and are just plain human. And Dax Shepard says, rarely do I learn something of value from someone's story of triumph, but I always learn a lot from people's failures. So I thought that was super cool. And because of that, the show really relies on honesty and vulnerability, which I think makes it really compelling and worth listening to. And it makes you feel like it's relatable. You're not alone. Everyone has made mistakes. On his part, Dax shares his sobriety journey and how it's affected his life. And I think it's cool that he's coming to it with his own, being vulnerable, and it sort of matches the energy of the guests. His guests are generally celebrities, mostly actors. So he's had like Ted Danson, Mila Kunis, Olivia Munn, many more, Amy Poehler. And he has them over to his attic studio in his guest house. And so it's nice. It feels like a very intimate setting to record, feels very safe. And he says, in my opinion, the number one issue we're all battling is shame and not feeling enough and not feeling adequate. And that's compounded in an age when a lot of our life is curated on social media. So this is kind of, in my tiny way, an antidote to that. And he calls his listeners armchairies, which you guys have mentioned before, which I think is so cute.
Yeah,
and so there's sort of like an invitation to belong to the podcast, have that community aspect as well. And there's definitely community. There's like 20 million monthly listeners. And Forbes says that based on that, it's probably making somewhere near like $9 million annually. And it's done really well. And just last year, the podcast made an $80 million deal with Wondery after having been under Spotify before that. Wondery CEO Jen Sargent said, Armchair Expert consistently delivers relatable, thought-provoking, and entertaining social commentary based on shared human experiences and interests from the most recognizable entertainment and cultural figures in the world. She says, as we embark on a true collaboration with Dax and Monica, we look forward to helping the Armchair Expert brand expand its audience and reach within Amazon's fandom flywheel across audio, video, merchandise, and beyond. And beyond. And so I thought it was cool that they've expanded to video. They're doing a lot more across their brand. So it's definitely growing. But I'm wondering, Derek, if you have a favorite episode that sort of stuck with you over time.
Gosh, favorite episode. I gotta think that there are episodes where Dax is talking about growing up in Michigan and kind of what he does as a kid and what he experienced. I can't remember if it was an episode where he was interviewing his mom and kind of the episode where he had grown up and kind of things that he had experienced with his mom. And it wasn't a smooth upbringing at all. So lots of challenges in his household with his mom and drug problems and husband, ex-husband, boyfriend, abuse, all of that kind of stuff going in. But it's a story I think all of us relate to in different ways of how we grew up, and kind of the good and the bad of it. And like, while all the bad's going on, like as a kid, as a young boy, you're still like hopping on your bike, riding down the road in the neighborhood as kind of a free range kid growing up in those experiences. So probably that's one that sticks to mind the most. And the other, there are probably stories I can't share here, but on the Armchair Anonymous, there's always something.
Oh, sure.
Kind of a gruesome story or just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe people are saying this about their private lives of something that happened. But really, you just have to tune in. It's, Armchair Anonymous, tune into an episode. There's bound to be something that you don't want to listen to in a large group.
Sure. Got some juicy stories in there.
Yeah.
My take is I'm not a Armchair. I think it's a great show, and he did a great job. Just one of the things that kind of shocked me about that. I was like, man, only $9 million for 20 million people. That's so crazy. The content is great. The format is great. The vulnerability is great. This falls into a category of content that I think that many great shows have, and many great shows that in B2B world we cannot replicate, which is the stars. They're just like us. And it's always really, 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 really interesting for very famous people to get very vulnerable, to get asked personal questions, to share these type of stories, to get a peek behind the curtain. So when people say, hey, let's make a show like Rogan, or let's make a show like Armchair Expert, or let's make a show like Hot Ones, you say, well, you could make a show that's half like that, right? You can follow the format. You could follow, having a host that's going to riff on things and having a, co-host that's going to have, expert details. You could ask really in-depth questions. You could do half of it. But the other half, the other piece of the magic that you have to have is that famous people, which people don't end up having, and then their show doesn't feel like that other thing. This is why Barbara Walters was so popular, why her interviews were so popular. Obviously, she did not have a podcast. She was doing this, via, interviews on linear television. It's why her interviews were so popular. She was such a good interviewer. It's why Oprah, same thing. There becomes a tipping point in which someone is such a great interviewer that that people know they're in such good hands that they will trust you with their story, and they will share these things, and they will divulge things. And that is replicable, I think, in the B2B world.
I think I'll challenge that a little, because I completely agree with what you're talking about in terms of the star power, the interviewer, like who's really good at bringing that story out. And you want to learn more about this person that's super popular. But one of the things, I highlight this in my book, but it's just an experience that I had as a marketer when we were doing a really big project. Years ago, a friend of mine, Mark, and I started this online conference called All Day DevOps. And we started this because in the tech market, the way software was developed, there was a new trend coming along, or new wave, if you will. It was just about how to produce software faster. And it was called DevOps. Still is called DevOps, but people were really craving for a way to learn that. Mm-hmm. And we had, there were a number of people in the market that were kind of the thought leaders at the time. And we would go to conferences, in-person conferences, and we would see these people. And we thought, there's an audience that can afford to come to this thing in person, but there's an audience, a bigger audience, that deserves to hear this stuff. Why don't we make this content available to them? And this was 2016, pre-COVID. We decided we're going to take this idea and put it online. We're going to create an online conference. And we ended up creating this thing. In the first year, we had, I think, 60 or 80 speakers over a 15-hour period. And a lot of these people, the qualification to be there was you wanted to be helpful, you wanted to share some information, and there were no vendor pitches that were allowed as part of it.
Yep.
Right? So it was just someone that says, I figured out how to do something in this realm, and I want to share it. And long story short, from ideation to the point that we kicked this off, we got 13,000 people to register for this online conference. And that experience that we delivered resonated so well. The next year, we ran it for 24 hours. We had 180 speakers, and we had 33,000 people participate in it. And we had maybe 3 or 4 keynotes during the whole 24 hours that were really people that were kind of famous in this realm, right? Mm-hmm. The influencers. But most of the people were just like, no one knew them from anyone. It was just like, I have a helpful piece of practical content that I can share. I'm going to be helpful. And we would we created this forum and we let them have the stage. And sometimes those people are like, I'm nobody, but 3,000 people are registered for my session.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Like, I'm not this famous, not this popular. Like, no, don't worry. It's online. You're just trying to be helpful with people. So you don't always need the experts to create the audience or the draw. Our big thing was be helpful. Don't pitch, right? Just deliver something that, like, here's something that I do or we figured out that was special. And that resonated, where people are like, oh my gosh, like, I can hear from these people that are true, authentic, not pitching, just sharing information. I can go into a Slack group and exchange information with these same people, right? Or these people in this community. And that helpfulness attracted a big audience. And we thrived on that. For years, we ran this thing. So we had hundreds of people coming through, but it was all like, find the person that's just trying to be helpful. Because sometimes you invited the big name thought leaders, and there was such an ego that came along with the whole thing. Like, oh, I'm going to be invited to this thing, and there's a big audience, and I need to be treated special. And we're just like, no one gets treated special here. We're all just showing up to be helpful, right? And if you kind of bring too much ego baggage, then it didn't really fit with the vibe of what we were doing. It was a huge thing that was generated with just regular everyday people being helpful.
That's fantastic. And I built a conference for military veteran startups back like in 2016, and similar sort of thing. It's just like, hey, let's just corral a bunch of resources here and try to just, help these people as much as possible. The thing is though, but you are putting your arms around a very specific group of people. Mm-hmm. You're putting it around DevOps people who want to be around other DevOps people. Yeah. What is Dax putting his arms around? He's putting his arm around the world. Like, that's like, if you were to start a show tomorrow, and this is, I guess, my point. If you were to start a show tomorrow and you were like, and I hear this all the time, I want to be like Rogan. I want to be like All In Podcast. I want to be like, Smartlist. I want to be like Armchair Expert. I want to be like Hot Ones. Like that, I hear that all the time. Yeah. Those shows are all famous people. Yeah. Like, and their shtick is about famous stuff that So like, that's my point. I think more is like, if you're trying to copy someone who is, if you're trying to take their blueprint and use it as your blueprint, you're taking the wrong lessons. Like, don't take the lessons like that they're doing. Because if Armchair Expert was him interviewing just strangers from the very beginning and never having any famous people on there or any famous friends, it's a completely different show. I don't know if it would have worked. Maybe it would have worked just as well, but it would have been really different. And so that's, I guess, more to my point, is like, what makes this show so magical is the vulnerability.
Part of that vulnerability is it's the story behind the story.
Yeah.
Like, the person from the big screen, right?
Yeah.
And you have that personality, that connection, whatever.
And you don't actually know them, right? You just know of them, right?
Right. So that story behind the story is definitely a valuable component of that strategy, coming into it. But I think it all depends kind of what is your goal and what is your aim for if you're starting that kind of thing, right? With All Day DevOps, yes, it was a specific audience, but you can take the same formula that we have and play it into ceramics, quilt
100%.
building, tractor people, barbecue people. Like, you could replicate the same formula for audiences that, at the time we were doing the DevOps audience, we were thinking the DevOps audience was, 250,000 people. Today, it's tens of millions of people, right? Probably 30 million people that it would resonate with, because it became a big thing.
Yep.
Over the years, we were doing that thing early on in that DevOps movement. But you can, depending on your target audience, you can kind of build bigger audiences. And the thing where we were doing this, and this kind of plays back to my B2B experience, was at the company that we were at the time, we created this as it was something that we did on the marketing team. And if you looked at the DevOps market overall, right, the target portion of that audience that we were serving with All Day DevOps, our company actually represented like 1% of what was happening in that market. We were not a DevOps solution for everyone, anyone in DevOps. And therefore, the thing that we offered would resonate with that audience. But instead of going after, hey, we're in this specific niche of the DevOps market, let's build something for that audience, which we did through our traditional marketing. We didn't continue that theme with All Day DevOps. We said, how do we get to the biggest audience globally that is somewhat connected to this? So we went out very broad and got a huge audience. But as part of that, we benefited tremendously that because we are doing that and providing value to that audience, we could create some brand recognition from that. But we also got all of the data behind the audience. We knew everyone in every company in every country around the world that was doing anything with DevOps. And that data helped us better understand as a business who to target out in the market. So there was some gold behind the community in terms of the data associated with it. And we certainly learned from that.
Yeah, and I would say, like, if you were to take, like, juxtapose that with Armchair Expert, where he started out this journey with a premise for a show, which is, I am fascinated, I have all these wild theories, and I'm going to test all these out, and I'm fascinated by how messy humans are. So I'm basically going to create a psychology podcast where I'm just going to test out theories and talk to people about that sort of stuff. So basically, he's sort of saying, like, I have a point of view on the world. And then is sort of like exploring that. And like, that is just like a very specific type of like person and thing that he's doing there. And like, that's like, you cannot have the show without him. Like, they've obviously branched out into like other types of shows and stuff like that. But like, it starts with his intellectual curiosity. And again, I just hear a lot of people that say things like, well, like, I would love to create, like, the hardest one, the one that I hear all the time is creating a show about SMBs. This is something that, like, I've heard this 1,000 times over the past, 8 years. And it's so hard. And the reason why is because, first and foremost, an SMB does not consider themselves an SMB. Like, that's not who they are. What Dax did was he said, I am curious about this thing. And he actually built a community around himself, around the ideas that he is sort of bringing up, which is way harder. And now that thing has a name called the Armchairs, which is hilarious. Yeah. That is so much harder than to say, I'm going to take like restaurateurs in the Bay Area and I'm going to just focus on that group, because that group inherently has a commonality and they probably see themselves that way. What he did was he took literally the people of the world and was like, I hope that you are interested in what I have to say, which is like so hard.
That's, part of when I talk to people who are like, I'm going to start a podcast or I'm going to start a community. And like, I heard that you created this thing where you had millions of followers or tens of thousands of people participating or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, okay, so you have this idea. What my first question is, why would people show up in the first place? Okay. So like, let's say you have an event or you have a first episode. Why are people going to listen? Right. They give you an answer. I say, okay, what's going to make me show up next? What will make me show up next week? So Dax has a guest. He has an idea. He's read a book. He's inviting the author in, right? They have a conversation. What happened in that episode that makes me come to the next episode, right? What did he offer me, you, Meredith? Like, what did we hear that said, I got to tune in next time. I got to figure out what the next thing is, right? It is not, oh, that guest is going to appear again. It's what happened in the conversation that says there's a connection here. And a lot of times when I ask people about like, so what happens the next time or what makes them show up the next time or the 10th time? And they're like, I haven't really thought through that. And it's like, and I think that people like Dax or what we did with All Day DevOps or what you guys have done with your own podcast, before you started, you thought through somehow like the 10th episode, like what's happening
the
by
100th
that
episode for sure.
Right. Because if you don't think through that far, then the audience doesn't know what to expect. They're like, yeah, that was kind of good, but I'm not really sure I would listen to that podcast again because the first episode didn't do enough. And, I even do this, like that kind of model I do with, hey, you're starting a podcaster community, but I also do it with my teams when we're writing content. I'm like, okay, and this is kind of a Dave Gerhardt rule that I stole, but Dave Gerhardt, once said, like, you write your first line of copy. You know what the first line of copy is? Get people to read the second line of copy. You know what the rule of the second line of copy is? Get people to read the third line of copy, right? And that you have to think about what draws people to the next, not just, hey, let's produce a piece of copy or let's produce a podcast episode or let's go and do that video. What did you do in that moment that got people to say, this is worth following or paying attention to or coming back again? If you have a store as an SMB, right? You own a bagel store, people come in, they have a bagel, they enjoy it. What did you do in that experience that makes them come back the next time and become a repeat customer, right?
Yeah.
People have to think about that is like, how do you create the next Joe Rogan? Well, figure out what's going to make people come back, not what makes people appear the first time. The first time is kind of an easy win. The second time or third time or 10th time is the hard part.
Yeah, I think that there's like this 3-tiered system that starts with first utility, like what are you going to provide to them? Like if I'm a DevOps person, I'm going to get better at my job. The second tier is now you have this person, let's just say it's Derek, who I actually really respect Derek and I care what he has to say. So now there's something that's in the zeitgeist. I actually want to just tune in to see what Derek, because I have thoughts on it and I would like to hear what Derek has. And then the third step of it is I want to actually talk about this with other members of the community who I have now gotten to know. So it's this journey from sort of utility-based consumption to a parasocial consumption where like, I don't necessarily know Derek, but I don't know Dax, but I care about how he thinks about certain things, to this community-driven thing where because we all follow this person, we all share this in common. Now there's commonalities there and it's probably close enough. We share the same lingo that he uses. Yes. Oh, this is great. So I can have a conversation with a like-minded individual in a way that probably is nice. And the way that you structure that has to be very purposeful, because if you have just the community without the other stuff, nobody knows how to communicate within the community, right? And you see those communities fail. If you have just the content and nowhere for them to like ever meet each other, that doesn't work either. And if you have just the utility, well, then they're just gone, and they are going to go on their merry way.
Yeah, exactly.
Derek, we could literally talk for hours. It has been absolutely wonderful having you on the show. For our listeners, go check out Derek's book, and everybody is trying to figure out community. And also go to Katalon.com, especially if you're looking for an automated software testing product. Any final thoughts? Anything to plug?
No, I think it's all about go out and be helpful to some audience, and you'll see how far that gets you. So I think it's gotten me pretty far in my career. So keep doing it.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Derek. We really appreciate it.
Ian, thank you. Thanks, Meredith.
Well, that's it for today. I hope you got some good ideas for your B2B content. Thank you for listening to Remarkable. I'm Ian Faison, CEO of Caspian Studios. Remarkable is created by the team at Caspian Studios, B2B podcast as a service. Caspian also creates fiction series for B2B companies, so if you want a business thriller, you can learn more at caspianstudios.com. Hollywood-style storytelling for B2B. And in today's episode, you heard from myself, Ian Faison, and Meredith O'Neill, senior producer here at Caspian Studios. Remarkable was produced this week by Meredith O'Neill, mixed by Scott Goodrich, and our theme song is Solomon by Falak. Be remarkable and rise above the noise.